The Omen. If this is the truth, where does it end?
Yours truly, Brevin Thompson, is back. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while now, and I have been wanting to do it since, earlier this month, since Richard Donner recently passed away. There's, a few movies that he directed that I do want to talk about before I move on to, reviewing other movies. And for this video, I decided to talk about The Omen, which he directed back in 1976. And this was 2 years before he directed Superman. And before I get on to my overall plot synopsis of the film, as well as my overall thoughts on it, I do want to talk about my first viewing experience while watching this for the first time. Mostly as a kid. I mean, some of you may know I've always been basically a horror fanatic since I was a kid. I mean, I've mostly been into the Universal horror films from the 30s and 40s, and from time to time I would watch slashers and other films that had werewolves and vampires and all that and shit. And I remember going to Blockbuster one time and I saw a DVD cover for the remake of The Omen, and I never knew that it was a remake. So I was like, okay. I looked at a DVD cover for the original, and I thought looked pretty interesting. So, but even though I thought it was interesting, I decided to give it a miss for some reason. It wasn't really until recently that I decided to get it on Blu-ray, and I gave it a watch, and I thought the movie was good, and it still holds up. And I think what Richard Donner intended to do was make the most horrifying movie that audiences can experience. And he succeeded on many levels. And there's a few shocking things that are in this film, but in particular the deaths. And when it comes to The Omen, it has some of the best deaths I think I have seen in a horror film. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's plenty of deaths that you expect in horror films, but I think when it comes to The Omen, they're really shocking and disturbing, and it's just good God. And when it comes to Jerry Goldsmith's score, it's definitely one of the best horror scores I've ever heard, and I think this is one of his best, given that he won an Oscar for his work on this movie. Honestly, when it comes to my favorite Jerry Goldsmith score, I really like his work on The Omen, and I love his work on the Rambo movies, in particular First Blood. I think his score for First Blood is incredible, and mostly his work on The Omen I think is pretty good. In terms of my favorite horror scores, I'm mostly a huge fan of Jerry Goldsmith's score for The Omen, and John Carpenter's score for Halloween, and Joe LaDuca's score for the Evil Dead movies. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Now, before I go any further, I do have a collaborator with me joining with me on this video. And of course, that is Sarah from SarahofHorror. I'm happy to have her back on this channel to talk about The Omen with me. And I always love having her come with me on this channel to talk about horror films. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. And thank you, Sarah, for joining me for this video. And now to you.
Well, hi everyone, this is Sarah from Sarah of Horror, and I'm doing another collaboration video with Brevin. So thank you so much, Brevin, for having me on again. And today I'm going to talk just a little bit about The Omen from 1976. So, it is pretty well known, and we have this couple who have this son who's a bit strange, and also deaths appear to be occurring around them. So they are suspecting that he might be the Antichrist, maybe. Yeah. So I am a big fan of The Omen, the original one, and I have to say that the child acts really, really good, and he is genuinely creepy. And also, I really like the plot, especially the death scenes are so good. I mean, the glass and the spear, it's, yeah, they are so memorable. Like, very just easy, not complicated, but very effective kill scenes. And that is probably what has stuck with me the most since watching it the first time. Yeah, those death scenes, so good. And also the small like predictions in the movie, the small details, really well made. And of course, just the struggle of, is this kid the Antichrist or not, or what is going on, as the parents begin to get more suspicious and things start to escalate. Oh, it's really good. And also, I love the ending. I don't want to spoil it, but I love the ending because it's so. Yeah, if you've seen it, you know exactly what I mean. It's, yeah. But Omen is a very good movie, and I'm happy that I rewatched it and that I got this opportunity to do another collaboration video with Brevin again. So those are my short thoughts about The Omen. A very good film with really good death scenes and a genuinely creepy kid. Yeah, so thank you all so much, and don't forget to visit my channel, Sarah of Horror. Bye!
So the film focuses on Robert Thorne, who's played by Gregory Peck, a U.S. ambassador who begins to suspect that something may be wrong with his son, as around him people are dying and animals are losing their minds and are afraid of him, and various other occurrences are happening around this boy. And it doesn't take him long to realize that his son is actually the Antichrist. I believe The Omen is one of the best horror films from the 70s. Everything from Richard Donner's direction, the acting, the amazing score by Jerry Goldsmith, and also I think it's beautifully shot. Now, when it comes to the deaths, like I said, they're pretty shocking and also pretty disturbing. The first one, the first big one being the death of the nanny who hangs herself during Damien's 5th birthday party in front of dozens of, for sure, scarred for life kids. And I was like, damn, that's fucked up. And the priest who spends a large chunk of the film trying to warn Thorne about the true nature of his son and that he's the spawn of Satan and that his mother was actually a jackal and that he must die and even tells him that even before his wife even told him that that his wife is pregnant and that she's also in danger and his wife will eventually die. And of course Thorne thinks that the priest is crazy, and how his death is played out is just like, ugh. And especially how Donner holds on to that one shot after the priest is impaled. That is some fucked up shit for sure. And easily the best death in the movie, the sheet glass decapitation, just the effects are pretty convincing enough. I think they had to have a dummy's head resembling David Warner's face. Like I said, the effects are convincing enough. I was just like, okay, that's some pretty fucked up shit. And especially Jerry Goldsmith's score in that one scene really excels the shock value. And speaking of David Warner's character, who's a photographer, he takes photos of certain characters in the film, and you would see this dark, shadowy thing, and it's definitely it's supposed to set up a premonition of a certain character's death, And at first, when I first watched it, I was like, when I saw the photo of the priest, I was like, this could definitely mean something. I don't know what. And once we get to his death scene, I was like, oh, now I get it. And it definitely just like it builds up to what's going to happen, and what does happen, like I said, it's fucked up. Now, when it comes to performances, I think that Gregory Peck does a pretty good job in this film. I mean, playing a man who's truly dedicated to his job. I mean, he loves his wife very much, and he also has a lot of love for his son. And when it comes to the end, where he has to make a very difficult choice, and how that plays out, I mean, you see the expressions on his face. I don't want to give away too much in case you haven't seen the film, but it just really shows how great of an actor Gregory Peck was. Rest in peace. This was one of your best roles. And Lee Remick, who plays the wife Kathy, I thought she was also pretty good. And she goes through a lot of shit in this film. And, I mean, it shows that she clearly loves her husband, and it shows that she is pretty capable as a good mother. And it's just the stuff that she goes through in this film. I mean, you're like, good Lord, woman. And David Warner, I also thought was also pretty good. And when it comes to his scenes with him and Gregory Peck, it kind of turns the film to a sort of mystery sort of film. And that's another thing that I like about this film, is the mystery aspect of it. Discovering Damien's true nature of, I mean, trying to piece together about what his true origins are, and discovering that he's actually the Antichrist. And when it comes to Billy Whitelaw, if I had to make a list of actresses who played the creepiest as hell nannies, she would probably be number one on the list. Because at first, I mean, she seems like an ordinary nanny, but in fact, she's actually an apostate of hell who is supposed to be Damien's protector. And her scenes are there's especially this one close-up in this one scene in a hospital, which I thought was pretty good. I mean, like I said, the film is wonderfully shot. I mean, you get this one close-up of her eyes while she's slowly approaching Lee Remick's character, Kathy. And you also hear Jerry Goldsmith's score, and it builds up the suspense. And the moment, I mean, you hear that score, you know what's going to happen. And when it comes to Jerry Goldsmith's score, it's just, it blows my mind, because Richard Donner had two of the best film scores of all time, back to back, with Jerry Goldsmith's score for The Omen, and John Williams' score for Superman in 1978. That's just, I like Jerry Goldsmith's score for The Omen, and of course I adore John Williams' music for Superman. I do like a lot of Jerry Goldsmith's score. I mean, most of his scores that I do like, I mean, like I mentioned, I really like his score for The Omen, and of course I love his score for the Rambo movies, in particular First Blood. And his score for Alien I also thought is pretty excellent. So, yeah, that's definitely how good the score for The Omen is. And it's, like I mentioned before, it's one of my favorite horror scores, right next to John Carpenter's score for Halloween, and Joe LaDuca's score for the Evil Dead movies. Harvey Spencer-Stevens, I thought, was pretty good as Damien, and to think that this 5-year-old kid was playing the Antichrist, that's definitely a big challenge. And his performance overall, I thought, was good, and there was not really much. I mean, I was watching his performance like a hawk for flaws, and his performance I just thought was good. And when you learn his true nature and what he eventually will become if he is allowed to live, you're just like, I mean, even though this is a kid, he has to die. It's just, and especially what the difficult choice that Gregory Peck's character has to go through at the end of the film, when he has these ancient daggers that are capable of killing him. I mean, that one expression on his face is, I mean, even with him saying, "God, help me," and it's just like, good Lord. I mean, like I said, the acting is great throughout the film. I would say my biggest issue with the film is mostly it could be slow in certain scenes, and sometimes they would hold on certain shots for a bit too long, and that's mainly my biggest issue. But overall, I still think it's pretty good. So, like I mentioned before, I think The Omen is one of the best horror films from the 70s, and it's a film that definitely helped Richard Donner give a boost in his career, and with this, he got the job of directing Superman, and since then, he has directed classic after classic. I mean, after this, he did Superman, he did The Goonies, he did the Lethal Weapon movies, he did Scrooged. This is the work of a legend who will never be forgotten, and when it comes to his work, especially on Superman and The Goonies, it will always hold a special place in our hearts. And when it comes to The Omen, I mean, it's not a perfect film, but it's one that is definitely recommended for those who are horror fans, and mostly because mostly in that time period, I mean, there was like a ton of satanic related horror films. I mean, there was Rosemary's Baby, and of course I mean, the biggest one being The Exorcist. And The Omen, I would say The Omen and The Exorcist were probably the best demonic movies from that decade. But mostly because of Richard Donner's work behind the camera, I think The Omen was pretty good and really suspenseful, and that's really what I liked about the film, especially with its performances and especially Jerry Goldsmith's score. I'm going to give The Omen an A-. So what were your thoughts on the film? Let me know in the comment section below, and thank you once again, Sarah, for joining me again, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with you again. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching, and I'm looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new movies, of course, you know where to find me.